Hello everyone, in this video I'll be introducing you to the Born Again shell bash and some common commands we can run in bash. Let's get right to it. Now when you start your terminal you get an instance of the bash, which is the Born Again shell. Now the first things you see is your username. In this case my username is Oreolua at the local host. Now it is possible for us to be remotely connected to a computer or a device, not necessarily a computer but a device, and as long as that computer has bash or has a shell, it in the stead of localhost you would have an IP address. But in this case, since we are on the terminal we have, or the shell we have is from the computer that we are running currently, it shows us localhost, referring to our current machine. Then we have this tilde sign. Now the tilde essentially just represents our home directory, and this $sign that we have here shows us that we are in a low level privileged user. If we were a privileged user, we would get the hash symbol there. And to switch to, just very quickly, to switch to the root user or to switch to a privileged mode, we use the command su, that is switch user. So if we do an su without specifying any username, the computer or the shell just assumes that we're trying to move into the root profile, and then it will request for the password for the root user. So in this case, if I press enter, it asks me for the password for my root user. I enter that password, press enter, and there you have it. Now you see that this username has changed, and now I'm the root user on my local machine, and my present working directory is Oreolua, and my prompt, or now I can see that the prompt has changed to the hash symbol, signifying that I'm now in privileged mode. So I could change settings and have more permissions to do virtually everything and reconfigure stuff on this particular operating system. Okay, so that's the first thing that we see. So if I wanted to change back to my user, I'll just say su Oreolua, and since I'm coming from a privileged user, it won't ask me for a password to go back into Oreolua, because Oreolua is a lower level user. Okay, so that's that about the su command. The next command we'll be looking at is the touch command. Now with the touch command, it is possible to create files on the fly. So I can just say touch file 1, and if I do an ls, I have my file 1. Now I could also do an echo. Echo will simply just print whatever I've written back on the screen, similar to your print function or print line function in Java, or printf function in C. Okay, so if I say echo and then I say this is CentOS. It displays that right back on the screen. Now it is possible to redirect this output. Now to redirect this output into a file, for instance file 1, I'll simply just press the up arrow to bring back those things, the command I ran previously, and then I use the redirect, and then where am I directing it to? I'm directing it into file 1. Okay, and I press enter, and this time it does not display on the screen because the output that was supposed to be displayed on the screen has been redirected into a file. So which brings us to a new command called cat. Now cat would help us view the content of a file without necessarily opening that file. So we'll do a cat on file 1 and press enter, and then this shows us our file, the contents of the file, which is this is CentOS. Similar to our single redirection into a file, redirecting a string into a file, we can also redirect errors into files. Instead of having those errors being displayed on the screen, we can have those errors displayed or sent to a file instead of being displayed on the screen. Now let's say for instance we said we wanted to list a file called file 2 which does not exist. Now we get an error saying that there's no file or directory like that. Now instead of having this being displayed on the screen, I could have this redirected into our file. Now to redirect standard error, we use 2 greater than and then whatever file we want to redirect it into. So all I'll do is run the same command again, but instead of pressing enter directly from the prompt here, I'm just going to say 2, and then so that means I'm trying to redirect whatever error I get to a file. Now in this case I'll specify file 1. I'm going to press enter. In this case you see that it does not display anything on the screen, but if we check the contents of our file by doing the cat contents of our file 1, we see that the content of our file 1 has been erased and replaced with cannot access file 2, no such file or directory. Now if we wanted, we'll see that this was a replace. If we wanted to do an append, that is, we wanted this ls cannot access file 2 to be the content of file 1, as well as this is CentOS to be on line 2, then we can do an echo at this point, but I'm just simply pressing the up arrow button on my keyboard several times to take me back to that command, because I'm just going to edit the command ever so slightly. Now all I'm going to do is to add another greater than sign. Now with that, it is going to append and not replace. So we press enter, it has done the appending, and all I need to do is to say cat, and then that is checking the contents of the file, and we see those 2 lines being displayed on the screen. So this is how to use the cat, the echo, and the touch command or commands. Next, let's talk about the copy command. Now, how do we copy one file from a particular place on our file system to another? Now, to copy, we'll simply just say cp, and usually we'll specify the file, in this case file 1, and where do we want to place file 1? So basically the format is copy, source, and then destination. So, and in this case, where do we want to place it? Let's say we want to place it on desktop, and we know that if we're in our home directory, desktop is just a subdirectory of the home directory. So we'll just specify desktop like that, and we would press enter. Okay, if we do a change directory, which is a command we looked at in a previous video, we would see that we can move into the desktop and do an ls. Here we see our file 1. Okay, and that's how to copy. Now, to remove this file or to delete this file, we do an rm, which is remove. So we remove file 1 and press enter, and then we do an ls to list all the files in that directory, and we see that file 1 is no longer in this directory. If we go back to our home directory by specifying the tilde sign, and we say, okay, in this case we don't want to copy, but we want to move this file. Now we will do an mv and then specify the file we're trying to move, and then the location where we want to move it to. Okay, now if we do an ls of our home directory, we'll see that file 1 no longer exists in our home directory. However, if we do an ls of our desktop, we will see that file 1 is now present in our desktop. And of course, if we do a cat, we see that it still contains exactly those 2 lines that it's supposed to contain, those 2 lines of string that we put in there. Okay, and those are the 2 lines. Okay, so those are that's how to use the copy and the move command. Next is rename. How do we rename stuff? Now, to rename, we simply use move. However, we move the file from the source will be the same as the destination, only that the name will change. So now, instead of having file 1, we'll change it to file. Okay, so if I want to do that, let's move into the desktop, because now our file 1 is in the desktop. So we change directory into the desktop, and then we'll do an we'll do a move. And what are we moving? We're moving file 1, but this time in our current working directory, and that's what the dot is for, representing our current working directory. If the dot was in front of the file name, then it would signify that that file was hidden. Okay, so in this case, let's make the file hidden as well as change the name of the file. So now we would make the file hidden by putting a dot in front of the file name and then make it file. Okay, and then we press enter. If we do an ls, we would not see file. However, if we do an ls -a, we will see file, because we made file hidden, and -a specifies that it should show all files, hidden and unhidden files. Okay, so this is how to rename files. We could also use copy to rename files. However, with copy, you would have a copy of that file. It won't it will create a copy of that file, giving it a new name without deleting the source. But with move, it will delete the source and give it a new name. Okay, so so basically that's the difference, and that's how we can do renaming in Bash. So basically we've talked about how to touch, copy, move, rename and delete files in Bash.